concrete definition, but that's what's generally referred to.
Well, what about the home-based photographer that's been around for hundreds of years?
I don't think that's allowed by our current zoning, which is why I'm bringing this up,
So
right?
maybe
We shouldn't have the question. We shouldn't
So
have the
maybe we
question.
should just strike that phrase.
That's right, and that's
Recognize.
basically what he's done.
Yeah.
He's trying to bring it up.
No, strike the phrase, recognized home professions.
Well, then only trade persons, cottage industries, and bed and breakfasts would be allowed, right? Our zoning, the way it's written right now, because it gives those specific examples, it says home occupations such as offices of recognized professions. So that's like a doctor's office, a dentist's
Right,
office.
such as, but it's not limiting it to. It's giving you an example.
Right, but by giving the examples, the attempt is to, it has the effect of limiting it. Is your production company like a office of a recognized professional? Probably not.
Why not?
Is it like a trade person? Probably not. Well, a recognized professional is something like a dentist, right? Are you having people come in and
Well, you said,
doing something?
what was the first one you said?
Offices of recognized professions. Trade persons,
As far as the current zone.
cottage industries, and bed and breakfast. Those are, it's such as, right? They're examples of what's allowed, but I think it's unclear. You could have selectmen, like I think the selectmen we've got right now would say, yeah, go ahead and do that. You're not bothering anybody, it's fine, right? That's totally legitimate. You could have other selectmen 3 or 4 years from now that say, no, we want dentist offices and we want trade persons and we want cottage industries, right? That's what the zoning says, that's all we're gonna allow. And I personally think that you shouldn't be subject to, the arbitrariness of whatever group of selectmen have to be there at a given time to interpret something that's extremely ill-defined. And now there's always going to be subject to interpretation. We can't get away from that. In fact, we want that, I think. But I think that, what we've got today, I know you don't like if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but,
But given small town politics and the way the political winds blow, we go around to somebody that doesn't particularly like your politics and tries to shut you down because it's not a conventional occupation, even though it's a viable home business.
No, well, I just have to sue the town and then you
Yeah,
have
exactly.
to change it.
And hence we get into the whole.
we've been through the lawsuits and stuff like that on other issues, and it's no fun for anybody,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. When they shouldn't be infringing on your rights to run a decent business that's not harming any of your neighbors.
I understand your argument. How does this address it? What in here fixes that?
It gets rid of those examples entirely.
Okay, you're saying.
The proposal is any business that's of a limited scope and doesn't screw up the neighborhood, right? And so the selectmen are going to have to judge what limited scope is.
And impact on neighborhood.
Right, exactly. And so, and there's some specific impacts that are addressed, like it has to be safe. You have to have a parking place. It has to be safe for people to turn in and out, right? I've heard stories about somebody who had, actually you probably know Eddie or Booney, somebody who had some kind of store on some curve on 109 where it was...
Oh, yeah, down here. It was a sweet little store, and it was worth your neck to get it out of that parking, the driveway.
Right, and I think the selectmen need to be able to enforce something that would keep that from, it may suck for that person that's there that they're not going to be able to have a
Well, the word
big...
got around that it was really scary to get in and out of the driveway, and her business went down.
So if I'm not mistaken, what you're basically, by proposing, it's proposing just this for this entire, so it would strike this customary occupation?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it would replace that.
So why, rather than, okay.
So it says replace.
I think what you're trying to do is take Brookfield, God forbid, but into the 21st century, wherever we are.
No, I don't even think, I think that it could have been
beyond.
written this way in the 60s. I think it just wasn't
No,
thought that.
when I moved here, 14 years ago, let me tell you, they were fighting about doorknobs.
What? You're kidding me.
Well, that's why the examples that you cite, those are specific things that they had in mind when they did it.
Okay, so I'm sorry,
It's time for us to move ahead, and moving ahead without being too specific is probably the best way, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Not specific where it's needed, but
Yeah,
something
people,
that can
this day
restrain
and
somebody
age,
from operating
people
their
would
business.
prefer to work out of their homes, and they can.
And it's beneficial to the community if they can,
Absolutely.
right? Not only does it help
We
their
don't need
family, but
some- No sidewalks, no sidewalks.
It strikes me that, it's a well thought out proposal. I mean, you've been working on this for a very long time, with the last 2 years to think about it, all the work's that gone to it. Right now, it seems like, in my impression, that it's kind of anything goes. We don't register our businesses in this town, so we can't really say what's going on out there.
That's fine.
And I'm not suggesting that we do. But what I'm saying is that, if I can just channel Gary Ciccarone for a second here,
Please.
we need to protect people's ability to earn a living on their property. I believe that's something he would say.
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is a good proposal. I think it's definitely worth continuing the process and accepting it as a working document. So
Oh, yeah.
I'll throw that out there as a nomination a motion,
I-
thank you.
I'll-
Motion to make this a working document.
I'll move that we make this a working document.
I think he just did.
I already made it.
Did you?
Are you seconding it?
Second it if you like.
Am I allowed to?
He's allowed to.
I'm allowed to. Nobody has to follow my lead.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any further discussion? So the vote is, will we accept what he presented at the last meeting as a working document? So at that point, George will go forward and start handling it as a working document. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Any abstentions? None.
Thank you, Rob.
So the question that is immediately brought to mind is, what is the schedule that we need to follow? Assuming this somehow does become a zoning amendment, we have to make sure we can still make it on the schedule, and I'm pretty sure we still can at this point. The first posting is January, right? That's somewhere the deadline is up in there?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that-
I think so.
I think
First,
that,
does it deal with the first posting? I think it only deals with the last. The notice of the last hearing,
Right,
which is in February, I think.
right. I think we still have time.
I think we got plenty of time. Because I know, now that I understand it better, and I understand what you're doing,
Yeah.
and it's a simple, I don't think it's gonna be a drawn out thing.
No, it's just hoops we have to go through to get it.
It's not a pulling a
Get
fast
it
one on
fixed
that.
up.
Not gonna be-
my intent was not to be pulling a fast one. I mean, I tweaked some stuff, but it was, I think, relatively small tweaks that are easily explained as far as what the intent was. And if there's any one of those that upsets somebody or thinks that it's a bad tweak, we should just go ahead and take it out,
Is
right?
this the kind of thing that we can publish on the web?
Yes, ma'am.
Because it's
Very shortly.
as a working document and then have a comment section?
I don't know about
Could we
interactive
actually
with comments and
become-
stuff, because I'd rather have people show up. I don't want people to do it
I would
virtually.
not do interaction on
No.
it.
No
We
interaction,
spend more
okay,
time reading
but,
emails than anything else.
Right,
Well,
and
You
then,
would get some emails.
And we have to read every one of them if we accept that
Well, no,
as a.
well, we've also gotten to
Yeah,
the
but
point
if you
with,
have a public hearing, somebody walks in the door, you gotta listen.
But
Of
we
course.
expect it as a
Well, you gotta listen to them if they email you,
communication,
too.
You have to read those publicly.
We want to listen to it.
yes,
Have
that's
good
the whole
input.
point, is get as much input as you can. Let it go forward. So, okay,
Next.
next.
Can
Any
I,
more?
I would suggest that if somebody has a proposed change already in mind, we should, if we can, address those. If somebody's ready to make some changes.
Nope.
I do.
Oh,
Why four
You
vehicles?
would.
Why limit it to 4 vehicles?
4 vehicles?
4 vehicles.
4 employees?
For employees.
For 4 employees.
That's what the existing zoning has. I just
But if
clarified
you have a
that.
successful business that's not being obtrusive.
So-
why not?
Because it's, well,
Open ourselves to commercial zoning, because you could expand indefinitely at that point.
Well,
You
so-
don't have a limitation to it. You could have-
So a lot of the
I'm
zoning,
just saying, it could
Because
theoretically happen.
there's provisions in there that says it has to be subordinate in scope,
accessory building.
so you really don't have that
There's not, you can't make it
unlimited
bigger than
ability
the house.
to grow it as,
So why
like if
limit
you
it?
had an
Rob, you got the
office.
floor, you don't have to
Why
raise your hand.
I do.
Why four? That's,
Sorry.
because
Oh,
that's
I'm
what
ignoring
we finally hammered out.
You're not the chair. He's the only one who pay attention to him.
Go ahead, Rob.
So, a limit on the number of employees is fairly typical in zoning ordinances. Most cities in the country set that limit at 0. Some will set it at 1 and sometimes 2. The intent of that kind of provision is to inherently limit the scope of the business and keep it so it is secondary and subordinate to the primary use, which would be residential. It doesn't preclude you from having an army of your own that live
I was
there.
just gonna say, the only alternative
And-
is,
Have your own army.
And I mean, like, Eddie with his, 2 or 3 dozen kids could easily, run a very large factory and it would be fine, right? I mean, as long as,
As long as you've got-
So you're
He
suggesting
wouldn't have to meet the child labor
limit the
laws.
number of people on site.
it-
With the internet, I can do it around the world as
Yes.
long as they're not on site.
The
Right.
impact comes from people coming on site, right? They're going to be coming there. They're going to be making, if it happens to be something that makes some noise, they're going to be having that many more people making noise, that many more people coming and going, parking there all day. The number of people that work there tends to, more people tends to be more impact. And I think 4 is, I didn't find another ordinance that I could find online that allowed 4 employees. This is. And almost every ordinance puts a limit on the number of employees. Most of it, like I said, 0, right? So I think this is actually pretty extraordinary, for what I was able to find. I mean, I probably read the ordinances from 400 or 500 towns regarding home occupations.
It seems to be almost like I don't know where the number 4 came in historically, but it just seems like they mirrored the typical family
I
size
think
of
that
4
probably
people.
sociologically, you figure.
Well, those are
you've got X number of
non-resident
people in
employees.
the family, yeah.
So, and you can run a fairly good-sized business with 4 people plus your family, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
Bigger with 8.
right, but I mean, we have to balance being able to make a living from your home versus, the impact on the neighborhood.
Oh, damn, thanks.
right? We have to make a balance there, and if you're getting to the point where you've got 10
So much
employees,
for having my jokes.
it probably makes sense for you to
Move out of town.
move into an industrial park or someplace that's more appropriate for that.
There are a number of places just across the line in Wakefield that are affordable. And there's some folks in town that have been mentioned in the past who have made that choice because they didn't want any limitations on what they were going to do. They started their business here in town and just decided that they were growing and they wanted to move out to someplace with fewer restrictions.
And that's a great pathway
Yeah.
for somebody to actually start a successful business, right? A lot of times, like, if you want to start a business and you have to, sign a lease for some space, that's a big hurdle to overcome, when you're just starting to start something out and you're trying to do it with 0 capital and minimize your risk. You're already investing your own time, right? I think it's great to be able to do it out of your own house or your barn or whatever you're going to, whatever resources you need to do your business. And if it's successful, then yeah, you get out of town, right? You move it, over to the industrial park or wherever it's appropriate for what you're doing. I think we're doing our citizens a great service if we allow them to do that. Most cities in the U.S. don't allow you to do that.
And I think it's consistent with the master plan, because the master plan specifically discusses keeping the town as a residential agricultural community. It doesn't talk about making a big gigantic commercial zone or having a Walmart or anything like that. So, I think to build on what Rob's saying, where it's almost like an incubator. You've got folks who have the opportunity to have a small family business, possibly employ somebody from town, give another person an opportunity, and if things really get going big, we retain our residential agricultural character by giving them
the boat.
the boot. Wakefield's over there.
If you read our town history,
the way it is.
If you read our town history, you can see that back in the old days, people bought and sold everything that they had pretty much here in town, right? I mean, right next to I think where Nate Weeks' house is, I think somewhere on the corner was a store that people I have to drive down to the Puffin Stop or whatever if I want something, or the hardware store. I could have gone just to my next door neighbor, and for that.
Take a 15-minute break years ago and go across the way and get an ale.
Yeah, what has come of our country?
No.
But I mean that's the history is that people were making a living and providing goods and services to their neighbors, and I think that everyone benefits from that. I need some big dirt moved. I got a guy here in town that can do it. And I'm buying milk from Eddie too, which is I guess that's agricultural, but it's like it's nice having the ability to stay in town for things and keep the money local.